As we know, Sundays are usually for rest, reset, and to get a day off after a long and tiring week. And the fact that you all are here with us truly means a lot. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you can learn something valuable from today's session. And with that, I would like to welcome you to the session hosted by Friends of Figma Kolkata. And I feel that it is a great session for all of us where we come together and learn from someone who has great experience in this field and where we can gain insights from Mrs. Olivia Chaudhuri. And before begin, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Smiti Kulthia and I handle the graphics and creative vertical for Friends of Figma Kolkata. And for those who are new, Friends of Figma Kolkata is a community driven initiative where we bring together designers, creatives, and curious minds where people can share their insights, their learning. The goal was to create a platform where people can grow through mistakes and without any judgment. And before proceeding, I would like to go over a few guidelines to ensure smooth and professional session for everyone. Please keep yourself muted to avoid any background disruption and noise. And if you have any questions or doubts, and since it's like this is an interactive session, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. Our team will be collecting them and it will get answered during the Q&A session. And it is expected from everyone to keep the chat professional and not to leave any negative remark, as this can lead to removal from the session and possibly from all other future events. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. I'm beyond excited to have Olivia Chaudhuri with us today. Thank you for being over here. And Olivia Chaudhuri is a UX designer at Microsoft, where she brings her experience in designing enterprise product, working across complex solutions. She also has contributed to the design community by working as a jury member for multiple bachelor's and master's students, and she has shared her insights with them. And I guess I'm beyond excited to have her. We all are excited to have her and learn something valuable from her. So now I would like to hand it over to Olivia to take this forward.
Thanks a lot, Smriti.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here and hope we have a very engaging session. I would really request everyone to keep the chat alive and type in whatever you feel like if you are able to understand and follow along. Yeah. So with that, let's get started. Okay, awesome. So, hey everyone, thank you for having me today and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Uh, it's great to see you all, yeah, to on a Sunday morning especially and joining me together in this session. I'll try to, make it worth your time. So, I hope the screen is still visible. Just can somebody unmute and say if it's still visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, awesome. So, hey, I'm Alivia. I'm from Kolkata, and that's why this session is super close to my heart because it's giving me a chance to connect with this special community. So, I just want to begin with talking about my journey. So, if you look at my journey, I started in 2017 studying user experience design in Symbiosis. I did my bachelor's from there, and then I went on to do my master's from IIT Bombay in interaction design. It might seem like a straight path to you, but it really wasn't a straight path. It mostly looked like this because journeys are rarely ever straight lines. So after 12th, I had no clear path. I didn't fully understand what is UX, what is UX design. I sort of chose it very intuitively because it just felt right. I had other choices like DU, Jadavpur, and all of this, but this is what I felt very drawn towards. And after that, COVID happened in between, like on my third end of the third year, and I moved back home and I graduated from Symbiosis online, which was a very strange experience in itself. After that, I joined IDC, IIT Bombay for interaction design. I was very curious to go deeper into HCI, human computer interaction, And I did not even apply to any other IITs or NITs because this is exactly what I wanted to do. Just sharing a couple of fun moments when I finally had my master convocation. That was a very special milestone for my whole, classmates and myself as well. And that instinctive choice is eventually what brought me here. I had an opportunity to work with Google. I interned with Google Pay. So this was me, sitting at the back of the bike going for user research with merchants who were using the GPay product. I also did receive a PPO, but life had other plans, and then I joined Microsoft, and that was my first full-time role, and it's been almost about 3 years. And since then I have been working with this incredible team that I have. They are awesome and they are very talented, and this is where I have been designing for enterprise systems. And of course that does not come with any fair share of ups and downs. So for example, finding a place in Bangalore itself was a very hard thing to do. uh, yeah, so those are some of the challenges I faced, but hey, here we are today. So let's get into it. Yeah, so okay, let me tell you a bit about Microsoft. I'm sure this name is not unfamiliar to you. Chances are you've used at least a few of the products by Microsoft, and perhaps you use them today, every day, in fact. Microsoft is a gigantic giant. It's a company of companies. It's a very powerful ecosystem, and these are just like a laundry list of the products that it offers, from things like Windows OS to Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, Word, even platforms like Azure. Then there are products like LinkedIn, even gaming with Xbox. There are so many things. It builds across very different worlds, and my work currently, it sits in the productivity ecosystem, specifically within Microsoft 365, or M365 as they call it. I work for Teams and Teams Admin Center specifically. So Microsoft Teams today has an order of about 300 million monthly active users. It's a very large user base, and every one of those users is part of an organization that needs to be supported, monitored, and configured. So that brings us to the main title of the talk: the most important user that you are not designing for. Most of us are trained to design for the end user or the consumer. It may look something like this. This is the Teams um, chat interface. You have Copilot in it, and this is how it may look. But in enterprise products, someone somewhere else is responsible for the experience that the end users are facing. And who is this person? It's usually the IT admins. So, this is the user base I'm going to talk about in today's talk. So, all of these products that you saw, they are used at a massive scale and they all need to be managed somewhere. So, each product needs an admin center. Now you may think, why are admin centers are needed in the first place? Why can't it just be like a settings panel in the product itself? Well, that's a fair question. But managing a system is a different ball game altogether. You're not changing one setting for yourself. You're defining how the whole system is running and behaving for thousands of people, in fact for millions of people. And that level of control and responsibility, it simply does not fit inside a typical UI. So just telling you what are the couple of things that admins do. Where do I keep the system running reliably? How do I make it safe for everyone to use, those who are using it? How do you troubleshoot if there is a particular problem? How do you monitor if something is going wrong? And how do you govern an organization at that scale? So these are all system level problems, and not really small feature level settings. So admin centers are super important, and that's why they are needed. Let me make this a little more realistic for you with some real JTBDs, as we call them, jobs to be done. Uh, these are the kinds of decisions our admins are making every day. Imagine a law firm. not everyone should have access to every document, right? It's a super like a sensitive space to be in. Junior associates may see something less or more. External collaborators might get a time bound access, and so on. Then let's think about another organization like a bank. Even something simple like a meeting being recorded, that could be disabled. Or if, can you send a Teams message to your teammate? Can you delete that message? Can you share something sensitive like a password through those Teams messages? Those things also need to be controlled somewhere, right? Then Teams is also used for frontline workers like healthcare officials. It is designed for people who are constantly moving and working in real time. So here it is maybe not about long meetings, but more about staying connected where it matters the most. And then at the other end of the spectrum, it's people like us who are working in IT. Think of like, a CEO of a company where they are in a particular meeting, and that meeting is having some small issues. If something breaks, it's going to disrupt the whole business, right? And when things are failing, it's the IT admins who are the ones have to figure out what's going wrong, and it figure it out very fast. So the admins don't really do just one job, they do multiple of these things that we saw across the various industries. It depends on the context and varies as per the industry. So we have established why this user matters, because they are the ones running everything behind the scenes actually. The job itself is fundamentally different from a product UI. A product UI is about using the system. Admin UX is about running the system. And scale is usually very, very large in an enterprise world. Earlier, I talked about the 300 million users we are catering to. The complexity is also very different. It's at the next level. And the consequence of clicking a button, that's manifold. So, how do you design for this? So, what changes here, right? It's actually systems thinking. You start thinking in systems rather than in silos. You may have sometimes even think beyond the product. You don't think in parts anymore, but rather in wholes. I found this really nice diagram online, so I'm showing you here. The relationship between the components becomes super important rather than the component or the UI element in itself. Information architecture becomes so much more critical. You're no longer just designing screens, you're designing the entire system end to end and how that system is perceived. Have you heard of this law, UX law called Tesla's law? It basically says that a certain amount of complexity is unavoidable. You cannot design complexity away. In enterprise system, these complexities are stemming from real world constraints like org policies, org structures, and so on. And in a lot of consumer products, we often simplify aggressively. But sometimes a level of complexity is unavoidable, right? So this is what the law talks about. All right, that was enough of theory. I'll quickly jump into one of the projects that I have been working on. Let's actually look at the thing, what it really means in practice, right? How do we design for complexity? So I will now be showing the recent project that I did on meeting troubleshooting. So, as you know, meetings is at the core of Teams. It is the soul of the product. And it is also the heartbeat of modern day work, just like how we are in a meeting right now. But if suddenly a meeting issue occurs and let's say the screen share is gone, it gets very disruptive, right? And it's a productivity loss not just for the presenter, but also the ones who are participating in that meeting. So, for our users, the admin, what is the requirement here? They want to get to know if a participant in a meeting is facing issue, they need to know it quickly and they need to remediate it fast. So this cannot really be a browsing experience. So your interpretation, the designer's interpretation, would be something like, how do I design for a firefighting scenario rather than a browsing slow experience where they discover it one by one? And where do you even start? The admins, they're looking at multiple data points, they're looking at multiple participants across multiple metrics like device, network, technical details, uh, like jitter, packet loss, and so many things. And often these are spread across the product in tables and tabs, and everything looks important. So they are scanning and switching context, and they are trying to connect the dots. And you, as a designer, you're looking at a lot of data, but nothing is telling you where to focus. So, how do you turn this into something that is actionable? It often feels like this meme, doesn't it? So let me show you the prototype that I have here. Here's how we cut through that chaos. So over here, we have a card which tells us when is that meeting taking place. It's on a certain date, the time, it tells you the status, what's the duration, what is the activity type, who was the organization, who was the organizer, how many participants were there, and so on. And then just beside it, you see an issues card. Here, like we saw in the example, that somebody was facing an audio issue or a screen share issue. So here you can just see it upfront. So instead of scanning through a whole list of things, the decision for the admins is made very visible, and it's made very immediate. So so that you get to see what's wrong just at the first glance. Even coming to this table, you can see here that at this particular instance in time, this is a time graph, there was an audio issue for two users and one user was facing screen share issues. And if you scroll down, isn't it very obvious that who was the users who were facing issues? You can just hover on them and get all the details that this was where the issue was detected, what was the affected stream, what was the duration of that issue, and can I view more details on it? Then you get some more information. For example, look at this person, cat. They have two lines. What does that mean? What could that possibly mean? It could mean that they have dropped off and joined again, and there are two overlapping bars. What scenario would have that? Giving you a moment to think about it. Yeah, it's that scenario where you are joining the Teams call through your mobile as well as your laptop. And this is that time where you are switching over. And in case you have faced an issue at that point of time, the admin can get to it very quickly. So, this sort of data visualization helps you get to the bottom of things. In fact, it gives you way more than what you had set out for. You can also see more details about what were the issues that were faced, right? What was the root cause? Because the admins, IT admins, are highly technical people, and they want to get the recommended actions and take those remedial steps very quickly. Then you also can see the legend if you are not able to understand what the graph is all about, and then you can troubleshoot that particular user. You can deep dive into that particular user over here, Beth, and see what's going on. You can get help from Copilot. You can see which location they're joining from. Is the meeting still in progress? Did they leave? What are the issues? And you can see all the telemetry details. Believe me, all of this was in like a huge Excel sheet where the data was dumped together, and it was up to the admins for them to understand. But helping them with a visualization like this and cutting it down as per the media modalities that we see today, it makes it much easier for them to consume this sort of information instead of overloading them together all at once, and also structuring it in such a way where you start with progressive disclosure, and once you get to know the details, you can, like I showed, you can go into the detailed telemetry and check that information. So I'll just pause here for a bit, and I would love to know how you're feeling so far. Are you engaged? Do you have questions, or is it too hard for you to follow? If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand, and the moderator would take it up with me. Okay, I see some engaged votes. That's great. Glad to know that. Glad to know that. I hope you're all following along because this is slightly technical topic, and we are talking about complexity here. But I would love, if the audience were to follow along the way I'm speaking. In case there are no questions, I can't see the chat right now. I'll come to it later. But in case nobody is unmuting, I'll go forward with my next project. So the next project is called Best Practice Configurations. This was done like 2.5 years back. Yeah, the problem statement that came to me was, this was more like a feature requirement, not really like a user need. So the thing was, our customers, the Microsoft Teams customers, they were not setting up the network as per Teams actually requires and needs it to be, and that's why they would run into certain meeting issues. So how do you get people to use the network configurations in the way that is meant for Teams? How do you get people to follow those best practices, that too for the entire organization? The last example that I showed you, that was for one particular user whose meeting was going wrong, like Beth. But how do you do that for thousands of people sitting across so many offices across the whole world, right? So how do you solve for that? So designer's interpretation here is, how do you drive action for technically detailed, high effort and system level issues? And you have to change the behavior as well. And this is what I was given. This is literally a screenshot I've taken of the problem statement that was presented. It's a huge list of data, and out of this is what the admins had to understand, that hey, something is not configured properly. That's why the team's calls are getting stuck. So let's break it down a little bit, one by one. This is my data visualization process. It helps me a lot, so I wanted to share that with you. So let's look at some of the things. So we have some real life context. I've blurred out the city, but you can see the country here, United States. So this gives you the real life picture, that where is this issue, or where is the thing, taking place. Then there are lots of numbers, right? And where do you start? You start asking yourself what relates to what. So in this case, if you see, this is column A and this is column B. If you add that up, it's actually coming to column C, which is the total count. So stream of a certain type and stream of another type is equal to the total count. So that immediately tells you something, right? That they are parts of a whole. That means you can use a certain type of visualization if you have studied data visualization, that you can use parts of a whole type of diagrams here. And then there are lots of percentages, right? The percentage is also important, because if you see here 3.7%, and then next one is 96%. While that may be the case, but a small percentage on a large volume might actually matter more. So it depends on how you as the designer is visualizing this information for the admins to take any action. Then you can also see more real life context, you can also see lots of streams, etc. So not all the data is useful perhaps, so you need to work very closely with your PMs, with your engineers, with your data teams, to understand what does this data really mean. Is this signal meaningful? Is it useful for the admins to take any action? Will it drive any action? So with that, it was very clear that from this particular table that we saw right now, there are three distinct things that emerge. One is a world map. Of course, we have locations that also globally, so the map made a lot of sense. Then the pie chart, which shows the part to whole relationship, and also the bar chart, which shows the percentage very clearly, and it helps you compare across. So this is the final design that we came up with. That is what we started with, the table that you just saw, and this is where we have come. So you can see the power of design here. You are making it very easy for the admins to really get to the point. When you look here, you first see there's something going down, and then you see three pie charts, and you see India is looking like a really large pie chart. That means what? The volume of things going through in India is very high. That's perhaps because more number of people are joining from the India offices. Then if you zoom in, I'll show the interaction in a bit. You can see that almost like 45% is unoptimized, right? Don't worry about what is unoptimized, what is it, those are very technical details. In case you know VDI is like virtual desktop environment and infrastructure. Some of you might be using laptops that are your, companies, and you might have to log in remotely, so that time you use VDI. And then if you take a Teams call and if it's not optimized properly, then it might lead to a lot of lags. So that's what VDI means here. And then you can zoom in and get more details. Let me show you how that looks like. This is a real life, this is the product actually. We were very excited to launch this in last November's Microsoft Ignite in Seattle. So as you can see, there are certain things that need action. Coming back to the same problem statement I was talking about, this is live code, by the way. This is what the engineers have made after looking at my designs. So as you can see, they can zoom in and zoom out and see that which IP addresses, this is a very network specific thing, right? So which IP addresses are facing issues, and they can just export that data and go ahead and troubleshoot those areas. So it's the same data that we saw, but the experience is suddenly so different. So design here is actually making the decision. It's helping the admins make decision, and it's supporting them in that journey. So as we saw that admins take a lot of high level decisions, and every decision carries a lot of weight. These decisions rely on data, and where do we see data? We usually see them on dashboards. So I just wanted to take a moment and talk to you about dashboards. Dashboards are decision making surfaces, right? So let me call out some of the common pitfalls that we encounter while visualizing dashboards. One is it has too much of data and not enough information. See the difference between the two. Data is just unstructured raw numbers. Okay, information is when you add a layer on top of it. It's when you make sense of that data. So if you are dumping everything without understanding through the lens of the user that this is what information they would require, then perhaps you need to look at it properly again through the lens of information. And then in the dashboard, if everything looks equally important, then perhaps nothing is important. You have to take a call on what is super critical, what is super important for them. So even if the decision making point is something very small, like we saw in that pie chart, maybe that pie chart, if I had not highlighted it, then it would have been lost somewhere, right? So if the decision making point is small and you think it's super critical, then you have to highlight it. And the next tip is about using native interactions properly. What I mean by native interactions, it means that if you're using laptop, desktop, then use those interaction like zoom in, trackpad, zoom out, all of those things. If you're mobile, swipe, zoom, pinch, all of these interactions are there. So if you have charts, make it as interactive and possible, and add more value using that. Use them as guide and not just to explore. And the last but not the least, this I have seen multiple times, and it's often a common mistake that designers make, that is not using the right chart type. Sometimes the chart is fitting the data, but it does not fit the human perception. So if there is a deviation from the normal, what is it that you want to show? Do you want to show that there's deviation from the normal? Do you want to show order? Do you want to show magnitude? Do you want to show rank? Do you want to show flow relationship between two variables? Do you want to show part to whole, like we saw in the last example? What is it that you are trying to convey? And then choose the chart accordingly. I can share some of these resources that I personally use in the chat after the session. So with that, I want to leave you with this quote that good admin UX is invisible when it works, but if it doesn't work, it becomes extremely painful. Not just painful for the admins, but across the whole organization, across all the users. I'll pause here. I had a little bit about product storytelling. If we have time, we can go ahead with it. Moderator, do we have more time to talk about product storytelling? I'm not able to hear anyone. So, okay, I'll just go ahead. So, yeah, there's one thing I want you folks to take away from today, uh, it's because, like we talked about complex products. Complex products don't fail because they are too complex. They fail when we don't explain them in the right manner. So we often, jump to features and architectures and, diagrams and screens and all the UX workflow maps that we have learned. But sometimes the audience, they might not be designers, right? They might be stakeholders, they might be your engineers, they might be PMs, and so on. They might be your leaders also, and they aren't trying to understand what you designed and all that. They are trying to understand why things are working the way they're working. Is anything at risk? And what changes are there to make? So I'll just leave you with, 5 points, 5 pillars of storytelling. The first one is start with who and why, not what. If you can't articulate what's not working today, nobody will rally around what you're proposing tomorrow. So it's very important to start with the people who are facing those issues, who are suffering, and why is it that something is a painful experience for them. So the problem is what you have to frame, right? The problem creates the urgency, and the product only earns the attention after that urgency is felt. Only then will your solution sound optimal, right? And third is talk about in terms of impact and not what you have done. You might have done very deep work. Believe me, the kind of work that has gone behind the two projects I showed, it's gigantic. But rather than talking about the process and how much work has gone behind that, it's better to talk about the impact and the outcomes. And leaders especially, they are more attuned to it because they are, pressed for time. So they want to know more about the impact rather than the effort. And then, if you have taken any design decisions that are grounded in constraints, like some technical constraints, and so on, make sure that you are explaining it through the lens of those constraints. Because it might look over engineered or oversimplified, or the designer has just taken this decision just because they could. It does not feel rational. So use the constraints to explain your design decisions. And fifth is simplify intentionally and ground it in real life context. So simplicity only works when it is grounded in an understanding of what must remain complex, right? We go by this principle in Microsoft, that simple on purpose and complex on demand, in case the user demands it. So when you have an idea of all that in real life, then you can simplify it. So those are the 5 pillars of storytelling, especially product storytelling, when you have to talk about products to somebody in an organization who may not be a designer as such. So yeah, the 5 P's are basically purpose, people, plot, place, and performance. So, with that, I'll end today's talk. I did a lot of parallel talking, and I would love to take some questions and hear from you. If you don't have questions, please unmute and talk about what went well today and what you could not understand, perhaps, if anything like that. So, yeah, I'll just stop sharing for now. Nobody has any questions? Don't feel shy. You can write it in the chat also. You can ask me questions based on the projects you saw and the data visualization topics that I talked about, right? Because I deal a lot with data visualizations. Then you can also ask about anything else as well related to design and Microsoft and so on. Okay, I see a question from Surbi. I want to understand your process of solving problems. Um, Thank you for the question. So it really depends on what is the problem. From what I have seen, it could be a bunch of different things. It could be redesigning problem, like something exists already and you have to make it better. So in that case there's one process to follow. Then it could also be you're designing something completely new, completely like not seen before ever. So the first example that I gave you on meeting troubleshooting, that was a redesign project. uh, the process there was slightly different. So let me just talk about it. We already had meeting troubleshooting workflows in Teams Admin Center, but they were not working well because it was super disintegrated. You know, when a meeting is in progress, like right now, versus when this is over, the meeting troubleshooting workflows for them were completely different, and they were different for their own reasons. You know, they have been built across time, over different teams have worked on them. There are different APIs which are giving us those information. So at that point of time perhaps that design worked, but in today's day and age it was not working. So we had to sort of get together and redesign that. So when we are redesigning, the process is, don't make the delta huge. You know what I mean by the delta, before and after. If it's suddenly huge, even if it might be a great change, people hate it. People don't like change. You might have faced that with your favorite apps. Perhaps you were used to using it one way, but suddenly one day something changed and you were taken aback. Now that is a consumer product. What happens in an enterprise product, right? If you just change a button, it was there and next day it's here. I just talked about the implications of things moving that button, right? It might break something somewhere for the whole organization. So you have to be very, very, very careful and very deliberate about how you are changing and redesigning. That was one. And the second bit about designing something completely new, then I usually go with blue sky design. I do so many ideations, usually on whiteboards or pen and paper, or even ideate with the help of AI nowadays, and try to come up with something completely wild, if I may say, and then see how does it fit into the product ecosystem. So that's why, I was able to push for the world map interaction that I showed you, because something like that had not been built before. So yeah, that's how my process is. If you had further clarifications, happy to take that up. Sure. And yeah, I think the moderators will make the recording available for you. So yeah, you should be able to access all this. Okay, I see another question. Can you share examples of how you are using Copilot for the IT admins to draw next steps from the data? Steps from the data. What do you mean by from the data itself, or from the UX design and the feedback from our IT admins? Okay. Okay, so if I understand you correctly, so of course, Copilot is in every layer of the work we do, work IQ, and we also have something called evals. We also keep our ear as a product team, we keep the ear to the ground very closely. We are always, having talks with our customers and hearing out, if things are working for them or not. And if not, what is not working for them. So we track that data. In fact, the PMs do it very well. There is researchers involved in it, the designer, myself, I am also involved in it. We talk to a lot of people from not only India but everywhere, I think everywhere across the world, different languages, different admins. We take all of that. So we do it in two ways, right? Quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative, of course, with the help of Copilot, we get to those answers very quickly. But we also take care of qualitative feedback. Is something working for them? And mostly, whatever feedback we have got so far for the best practice configuration project, the project 2 that I showed you, it has been super, super positive. Some of the feedback we also got was about, hey, can I just copy paste this in an email, or can I share it with another team? And we are enabling such flows. So we make a backlog of all of those 1, 2, 3, 4 things, that these are the next fast follows that we should do for our customers, and we make sure to push them out as soon as possible. And funnily enough, just like an anecdote, design actually, before MVP is the minimal viable product. Before MVP, it actually thinks through the happy end-to-end flow. So most of the time it has been the case that I've already designed for that use case, and we're just building it slightly later. So that's how we resolve the issues. Yeah. Hope that answered your question. Thank you. All right, I guess those were the questions. Did folks from Friends of Figma had any questions for me? Would love to answer. Or it can just be feedback as well. It doesn't have to be a question.
Hello, everyone, and first of all, I would like to thank Olivia for her enriching session. Like, it was truly an enriching session for me, and I guess it was for everyone. We gathered some really valuable insights, and I would like to thank her for sharing her insights and experiences with us today. And as this brings at the end of the session, and I would also like to inform everyone, like, to share their insights and experiences, what they liked in the session, and to share this with everyone. And if you want to join our chapter page, we would love to be a part of our community. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a really great Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was great being here. And thank you, Smriti, for hosting. Thanks, friends of
Thank
Figma
you.
Kolkata. Hope we meet again.